Okay. Well, we'll get this show started. My name is Kayvon Berumen, and I'm the founder and CEO of Nest GSV. Nest GSV is a platform that basically supports startups, corporations, governments, and universities to leverage technology to solve big problems around technology, education, healthcare, and so forth. So we actually have a physical center in Silicon Valley. And our aim is to basically bring these entities together to build scalable companies and hopefully, be able to solve some problems around the different sectors. Today, I think we're very honored to have two very successful entrepreneurs who, I don't know why they decided to tackle this problem around education, but if anyone can solve it, it's these two guys. We have Jeff Ralston, who's one of the co-founders, and Tim Brady, also. So I'll let the two of them introduce themselves, and we'll kind of take it from there.
So, it feels a little odd to be talking in a microphone when we have such a small group. Do you guys want to come on together so we don't have to keep on going back and forth? Come on. Come on.
We got candy.
We don't bite. We can make this a lot more of a conversation. Yes, no, I'll keep on using the microphone. I understand. Thanks, Kayvon. It's nice to be here in sunny Arizona in this freezing room. My name's Jeff Ralston. I have been involved in the tech industry since the beginning of my career a long time ago, either as an engineer, programmer, or as an executive in high tech. Tim and I got to know each other when we were at Yahoo together. I had a small company that got purchased by Yahoo in 1997 because we had created a web-based email product, and that program turned into Yahoo Mail. And I spent about 9 years at Yahoo doing various things, from running a group in engineering to being the general manager of a multi-$100-million division to succeeding Tim as the chief product officer of the company. When I left Yahoo, I became a very active or fairly active investor, and invested. I've invested now individually in about 70 companies, and I also took another job again and ran a music company that got bought by Apple in 2009. And when I left Apple in 2009, Tim and myself and our third co-founder, who was supposed to be on this panel but couldn't make it, and is doing some other stuff now, founded Imagine K-12 in order to make a difference in education in ways that we felt we could be most impactful. And we can talk more about that as the panel goes on. But we're really interested in finding founders and entrepreneurs who are interested in making disruptive change in a field that we feel is actually begging for it. And hope we can have a conversation about that during this panel.
Great. My name's Tim Brady, and like Jeff, I'm a trained engineer and have spent my entire career in the tech industry. Was the first employee at Yahoo way back in 1994. Spent 8 years there, felt like 16. Left Yahoo, did a few other things, and then found myself running a nonprofit education company called QuestBridge. And while I wasn't necessarily attracted to the education industry at that point, I fell in love with this idea, and I knew I could help. And QuestBridge essentially connected high endowment universities, all the high brand colleges that are now in your brains, Stanford, Yale, Princeton, whatnot, and connected them with high achieving, low income kids. And we used the internet to make that connection. Despite what logic would tell you, they weren't finding each other, and QuestBridge kind of played a trusted third party in that process. Had just an amazing experience in running that, in scaling that company. While doing it, fell in love with the education industry. Also while doing it, had children. Scaled that company, was looking for the next opportunity when I ran into Jeff at a Yahoo alum breakfast. We got talking, and obviously both had school-aged kids, and wondered out loud why, the changes we had seen in our personal lives, in our business lives that we were very involved with early on, kind of in the consumer internet industry, why that hadn't made its way to our kids' school. And we knew very well that we're fortunate enough to live in a great area, and if it wasn't making it to our kids' school, we knew it wasn't making it anywhere in the States. So that's kind of what brought us together, and why we're here still today.
Well, great. So I wish I was a fly on that breakfast meeting, alumni breakfast meeting, where who approached who, and say, okay, hey Jeff, or was it Jeff came to Tim, or it was you? What happened there?
Well, the three of us, Alan and Tim and I, were all sort of kind of cogitating on what was going on in the world of education for a variety of reasons. When I had first left Yahoo, I had tried to start a company in education and just couldn't sort of see the path. And really, after thinking about it hard, and I'd kind of come back to it after selling the company to Apple, and so it was on all of our minds. So it was a natural thing to talk about. It just sort of came up, and we all started. Alan and Tim and I started getting together a couple times a week to talk about where the impact could be had for sort of aging entrepreneurs like us. Where could we best marshal the resources that we had at our disposal to make a difference, and that's how, in the end, the conversation led to Imagine K-12.
Now, you're also one of the partners at Y Combinator. Were you already with Y Combinator at that point, and would that come after, or?
So I don't know if y'all are familiar with Y Combinator. Raise your hands if you're going to get some audience interaction here. If it kills me, Y Combinator is a technology accelerator that was founded in 2005 by Paul Graham, and it's probably the best known accelerator, at least in Silicon Valley, if not the world. And I've known Paul. Tim and I have both known Paul for a long time. His company ViaWeb was purchased by Yahoo in 1998, I think, and he spent a year at Yahoo and broke as many rules as he possibly could there, and so we got to know Paul pretty well. And I was already working. I wasn't what we call a full-time partner at Y Combinator at the time. It sort of happened almost simultaneously with Imagine K-12. Paul helped a lot as we were founding Imagine K-12, and so I was working with the companies at Y Combinator on a part-time basis, and we sort of formalized that as a full-time, sort of concurrently.
Okay, so maybe you can explain what areas did you take from Y Combinator, and how are you different, I guess, from Y Combinator? We'll go to Tim later.
Tim, you want to answer that? Yeah. So I'll start, and then Tim can finish up. The short answer is that we took as much as we could that made sense from YC. Paul has, for those of you who have maybe read a little of Paul's essay, he's a prolific essayist and commenter on startups. And I think he's deservedly renowned as a world expert in the field of getting young companies going. And so we took as much as we could, and Paul was incredibly open about showing us how Y Combinator works and how it didn't. So so the basic structure of Imagine K-12 looks a lot like Y Combinator, but we definitely do things differently as well. Our program looks a little different. It is a little more focused on education specific areas. We have a major event that Y Combinator doesn't have called an Educator Day, where instead of just having an investor day or a demo day at the end of the 3-month period, we have the companies present to a couple hundred teachers, principals, superintendents so that they can actually find customers early on, and equally important to customers, feedback from potential customers. So we do things like that. I'll let Tim add on, but we do have a very focused educational bent because we're a vertical version of Y Combinator that they don't have.
Yeah, just maybe one other Paul Graham story. You know, we obviously asked Paul before we started this, and you know, YC even by that time was very well known. We said, as you know, we're thinking about doing this. Is this a good idea? And Paul got all excited and said, absolutely. I get dozens of ed tech applications to YC, and I turn them down because I don't know what to do with them. The only thing I know is that I can't help them because the education industry is too complex. And so he's like, but that said, you know, the power of startups, the energy of entrepreneurs, he's like, if you guys, he's like, I know the education industry is very complex, but if you could somehow harness that energy and that focus and point it at the education industry, it could really have a big impact. So yes, it's a great idea. And I think that kind of was enough to, you know, to propel us forward.
Yeah, so obviously, you know, you talked about the passion because you have children and you wanted to basically make a difference. But it seems also just as important was the challenge that you guys saw, and you guys wanted to be able to tackle that challenge was also maybe a driver for you guys. Is that correct?
Well, certainly, I mean, everyone in this room, I think, is in some way likely to be involved in education, and there are the challenges that face us are definitely legion. But it wasn't sort of like, wow, that's a tall mountain, I'd like to climb it. It was, I think, the feeling was that the educational system in the United States has gone from being the engine of extraordinary economic growth, extraordinary growth in the well-being of generations of Americans, to being a barrier between us and the standard of living that we want to have for all of our children and their children. And realizing that was a shock to me when that sort of sunk in. And I think that personally, more than anything else, drove me to want to do what I could to have a positive impact on that view of the world and that future that we all ought to see coming too fast. There's too many wasted generations, too much potential wasted already has gone past as the decades have gone past, and we've been complicit in allowing our educational system to become mediocre or to stay mediocre after decades. And it felt like it felt like change was possible. So we did.
Yeah, I'll just add to that maybe a story from QuestBridge. You know, one of the things that was really clear to me, these schools, high-branded schools that prided themselves on teaching the brightest minds, in fact weren't. There were some bright minds sitting on the sidelines that they weren't finding. And so by enabling those students to be in the best universities, changed just the little thing of that QuestBridge did by making that match. It bettered the university, and it changed the trajectory of these kids and their families. And it was a little thing, right? And I think it was a lesson to me that little things in education can matter, and tech can help, right? It can provide little things. It can provide enablers that can make little differences here and there that may seem little upon transaction, but kind of the lasting impression of them can be huge when added up.
So talking about tech can help. Now, you know, I went to both public and private schools, you know, my K through 12. But both of you, you know, what was your experience? You went through public school, right?
Yeah, until
Both of you,
university,
actually,
I
until
went
university.
through all public schools, yeah.
And obviously, you know, great schools, you know, Stanford, Duke, Dartmouth, and Harvard. So, I mean, you know, you guys are living proof that at some point there was a right, you know, the public school system allowed people to have successful careers in college.
Our parents were both billionaires, so that's not really true. It's not true.
But, you know, so back then technology did not exist. So the question that I pose to you guys is how much of it is a lack of technology versus maybe a degradation in the quality of teaching? And, because, and sometimes, my daughter, for instance, in fact, all our kids go to private schools. So, we've all lost a little faith in the public school system. But, I know, for instance, my daughter, that our kids go to the same school, they have probably access to the best technology, the best resources. But, I think sometimes there's too much dependency, like on math, on computers to teach it. And whereas with me, basically I remember in my days, it was all about the teaching. So getting back to that, how much is technology to blame or lack of technology to blame? And how much is it really the lack of quality of education, in your opinion?
I don't think it's the lack of, when I think back on our public school education, teachers were great. My parents dropped me off in the morning, picked me up at night, had no idea kind of what went on in the day, trusted that good things were happening at the school, and in fact they were, and it kind of all worked out well. It was a very different time, right? It was a very homogeneous population that I grew up in. I don't think there's too many more communities like that. It was not a crowded school. There was plenty of funding at the time. And also I think that the teaching corps, back then in the early 70s, the half the working population were not women. Women were not encouraged. So what happened was the most talented women were teachers. They have been, I won't use the word siphoned off because that's the wrong, but they have other opportunities now, and so it's been harder to recruit the same talent. You have much more diverse communities in the same school. A healthy percentage, English is not their first language anymore in almost every community. On top of that, we've being the government, our states have layered on compliance, which have kind of made the teacher's job more and more difficult. So it's not really a lack of technology that's causing anything. I think where we're coming from is technology can help, right? I think some of the problems that exist today didn't exist when we were growing up, and what technology can do is help today's teachers cut through a lot of those problems. Probably the range of ability within a classroom, a larger classroom, is wider. So how do you deliver differentiated teaching to a more diverse, wider ability, classroom? It's tougher, right? Tech can help. It can't teach, but it can help teachers make them more efficient. And to your last point about kind of math and without a goal of what you're going to, or what you want to teach, technology can't help, right? You have to have a goal of what you want to teach. It's really only an enabler, and you have to use those tools right for the right purpose for them to really help.
Okay. So
let me just add a little on to that. As Tim said, the problems in education today were not caused by technology or lack of technology. I don't think we should think about technology and education in that context. We should think of technology as an opportunity to shine a bright light on what's going on in the education system in many cases, and create a system of accountability that will allow us to really see deeply what's going on and therefore take steps to fix it. But that's only part one. Part two, and I think this is really important, is a recognition of two facts. One is that we still teach our kids in the same fashion that they were taught 100 years ago in a world that was radically different. And that system needs to be updated and needs to be rethought. Secondly, in the last 20 years, thanks to a lot of the companies that started up around when Tim and I were cutting our teeth in the internet, the entire world of knowledge and information availability and accessibility has radically changed. There is now a parallel universe of educational knowledge that exists to our education system, and we can't ignore that. We shouldn't ignore that. It's kind of ludicrous that our children can often have access to all of the information in the world until they go into a school, in which case they have to shut everything down. It's crazy.
So, one shocking statistic for me, at least, and we're all in the innovation business, so, United States around the world is probably the number one in innovation. And, basically, innovation typically leads to success and economic success. And innovation also is a strong correlation with education. But a country that's number one in innovation around the world, in some areas is ranked in 32 globally. So, what is causing that, this discrepancy, and should we be scared? I am.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. We should be scared. If you look at what's responsible for the innovation, I think you could argue pretty convincingly that our university system is more so than our K-12 system is responsible for that. I also think if you look at, certainly in the world of tech, over the last 2 decades, the percentage of successful entrepreneurs that go through the U.S. post-secondary education, become successful entrepreneurs, did not get educated K through 12 in the U.S. They're immigrants. And so we have been living off of in some respects, other people's K-12 systems. And that's not going to last forever, pretty clearly, right? So I think it's a bit of a scary situation. The ranking and those PISA scores that you talked about, it's only a matter of time where they're going to catch up with us. I think we're in that transitional phase, where the U.S. have been able to attract talent worldwide to keep this innovation engine going, which is really fueled by the post the university system, but it won't last forever.
And we also shouldn't forget that there's a lot of great education that happens in the United States. A lot of great students. And our best students and our best schools are as good as schools anywhere in the world. The problem is less that that our top folks aren't great and that the creme de la creme is not creating innovation, although it's also true that we're still a magnet for very innovative people from around the world. The problem is that the overall level is 32nd or 31st in math and 17th in science and or 17th in English, I think, and 23rd in science. And the last PISA ranking, international ranking. So we suck, right? We're overall, but the fact of the matter is, built into that, if you dig in, what's really happening there is a whole ton of inequity and inequality of outcomes, which we all ought to be very concerned about in the United States, because I think the last thing most of us want to build is a country as stratified as a South American country, right? We'd like to believe that we're in the land of opportunity and equality of opportunity. At least I want to believe that, and I think at Imagine K-12 we're hoping that that maybe tools built by some of the Imagine K-12 companies can help kids rise above their situation to do whatever they can and their abilities allow them to.
Okay, so let's get back to Imagine K-12. Now, this is you've graduated how many classes now? 4. 4 classes.
4.
And how many companies has that been now for the past 4 classes?
39.
39 companies. So out of those 39 companies, you know, what has been the biggest challenge for these companies, you know, basically facing them, you know, in order for them to become successful?
You want to try this one? That's a hard one. The biggest challenge, you know, it's startup companies. Has anyone in the audience done a startup company? Anybody? Yeah. Okay. So it's really hard, and it takes a lot of time. And it's early for us. We're only 2 years in, so the oldest companies from that have gone through Imagine K-12 are 2 years old. So you know, the challenges are legion for any startup company. For Imagine K-12 startup companies especially, it can be difficult to even raise money. The good news is that serendipitously we started Imagine K-12 when the pockets of venture capitalists opened up considerably for education technology, and this conference I think is a demonstration of that investor interest. So there's a fair amount of investor interest right now in raising money. But the next set of challenges revolve around, okay, so what's the business model? There's $4.6 trillion with the T spent on education around the world. How do you start tapping into that money? And it's never quite so obvious. It's hard to sell to districts. There's 16,000 in the United States. It's hard to break free of break that money free. And for a startup, even if you could successfully sell to districts, that means building a fairly large sales force, which is always hard to do. So the companies have to raise money, create a business model, and do this in some iterative sense because they tend to need to get traction before they can actually demonstrate to a venture capitalist that they're investable.
So I'm going to play maybe a little contrarian here. You know, some may argue that what you guys are doing is too little for too big of a problem. In other words, you know, a company comes out of your guys' program, gets a little bit of funding, a little bit of mentorship, and you feed them to the wolves. You know, that's a recipe for disaster. Is that true or not true? I mean, is what you're doing making a difference, or?
Yeah, I'll let Jeff answer as well. Every company starts small, right? There was 4 of us when we started Yahoo, right? And that was a stupid idea by many people's opinion, right? I mean, that's how all companies have to start somewhere. So is it too early? Are they too small? Absolutely not, right? The one thing that we kind of preach in our incubator is, look, you have some disadvantages of being small, but take advantage of your advantages. You can move fast. You can be energetic. You're not bureaucratic. Make decisions quick. Move, right? So that has huge advantage. So being able to use that is important. Are we making a difference? Absolutely, right? Is it going as fast as we want? No, we want it to go faster, but we also realize, for those of you who listen to Steve Case, it's, this is a decade or two of work, right? It's not an overnight thing. That said, in the 2 years, the products that have come through our incubator have, reached over 10% of the teachers, are being used by over 10% of the teachers in the States. And we estimate probably a third of the schools in the United States within 2 short years, right? And whether or not they ultimately make money, we'll see, but they are having a positive impact now, and that that's enough for us to keep going and to keep doing what we're doing.
You hit me in the head with that, Jeff.
No, I mean, I think it's actually a fair question, even though it may sound contrarian as to what sort of impact we can hope to have. I mean, pointing again back to what Steve Case said, it's the entrepreneurs who are the drivers of job growth and change in the U.S. economy. And so what we're doing is helping feed into that ecosystem hopefully better prepared companies to make a difference. We didn't go into this thinking that Imagine K-12 would somehow by itself overturn decades of stasis and lack of progress in fixing the U.S. educational system. That being said, here's the great opportunity that we see in front of us and that we hope to be able to have some impact on, in which hopefully 10 or 20 years from now we can look back on and say, yeah, we did do something, which is that, I talked about this parallel universe out there of education and knowledge that never existed before. The fact is, there are millions of children in the United States that aren't getting the education they ought to be getting and are not getting the opportunities they ought to be getting. And there are hundreds of millions of kids around the world for whom that is true as well. And yet this parallel universe can give us all hope that they can also reach their potential, that hundreds of millions of kids in the United States and around the world can reach their full potential. And that's incredible, and that will be driven by access to the kinds of technologies that Imagine K-12 companies and others are creating. And that's why we're doing it. And so it may be small ball, and we may hit a home run, but we're going to keep on swinging.
Yeah. And I think you guys are also investing your own money in this whole thing, so you're not raising money. This is your own capital that you're putting to work, which...
Yeah, it's been all our capital so
Yeah.
far, right? And I think when we first got going, just to give you kind of an idea of our mindset, we knew we'd have a class of 10 companies we'd work with in each cohort, and we said, wow, if we can just get one of them funded, that's proof point enough to keep going. And that was our first class. 7 ended up getting funded. So again, things are moving, much faster than when we originally got going, and we continue to be excited about what we're seeing and the progress being made.
So, and let's get back to government. What role do you guys think government should play specifically to ed tech startups in the K-12 industry?
I think the history of kind of the federal government, their participation in innovation has kind of been not a tops down, but kind of holding out a carrot, as you said earlier today, hoping people would go after it, and we're seeing that with kind of the race for the top dollars, and we think that's great, right? We think incentivizing people to innovate rather than using the stick is definitely the best way to create better technologies. I think what you're seeing with Digital Promise, kind of an acknowledgement that the purchasing cycle in our K-12 system is, I won't say it's broken, and they're trying to fix it, right? They're trying to kind of aggregate buyers so it's easier on startups, right? 16,000 different districts, all with their own decision-making process. That's death to a two-person startup. So they're trying to fix that. I think those are great. I think that the fact the government is doing that, they've pointed out, they've picked out problems that they can fix or incentivize, and they're doing a great job.
Yeah, so I agree. And I think the government can create an environment in which change can happen and startups can flourish. So the government can, in a sense, get out of the way, but more so help foster the innovation that can make a difference. I also think that the government has a role in setting universal standards that allow startups to create universal APIs and universal solutions that'll work in Alabama and in Oregon. And the Common Core is an example of that, being able to say, hey, this is the curriculum in math and in science and English language arts that everyone supports, and to be able to create software that has to only work with one version is a very powerful plus for any new company.
Right. Okay. So I think we talked earlier today, and you guys said you have how many companies are attending this conference?
17. Yeah,
17
companies.
out
Yeah.
of a total of
Well, out of our 39, but I think 170 are
companies.
here.
So 10% of the companies here
Yeah.
presenting are Imagine K-12 companies. So I know a few of them are here in the audience, so we won't ask you who your favorite ones are, but but maybe give us
Clearly Tap to Learn.
but give us a sampling of some of the companies that are here today, and what is it that you like about them?
We love all of them. We tend to very simplistically categorize our company 3 ways. They're either learning tools for kids directly to learn knowledge, teacher tools that help teachers do their jobs better, more efficiently, more effectively, and administrator tools, so tools that tend to work at a school level. I guess one example of a learning tool is Tap to Learn. Robbie is here in the audience. One of the best-selling, one of the top sellers of educational games in the entire world. Tap to Learn was in the very first class of Imagine K-12 and was the first company to do Y Combinator and Imagine K-12 simultaneously. So they're doing great. They create fantastic learning games for kids that they actually manage to sell quite profitably. Both really good characteristics of a company that can get on a path to a sustainable business. Who else? There's Class Dojo, which is, from a usage perspective, our fastest growing company. That's a company that went from 0 to 60 incredibly quickly, is used by hundreds of thousands of teachers, maybe even over a million teachers, millions of children every day. I think that's the cameraman. That's funny. And has really demonstrated that the consumerization of the enterprise that is the school is real, and that you can get your product in front of the people for whom it's going to be most effective in ways that were never possible in the past. Other companies, you want to?
Sure. EduCreations, which is an iPad app which essentially allows every teacher to be their own Sal Khan. They can record their own videos. Really simply, just hit a record button, talk, use a whiteboard, stop, and then upload it to your class. Sure. An example of an administrative one is LearnSprout, which is kind of a company that provides APIs into the student information system. So one of the big problems existing at schools these days is all the student records, grades, personal information are locked in this with SIS, and it is not interoperable with any of these EdTech apps in any way. And so LearnSprout provides a way to get information in and out of that system.
Obviously, we could go on and on.
Yeah, we could go on, but
Okay.
so
Let's not. No, but so let's talk about, for those guys who are entrepreneurs here, and maybe walk us through the process of engagement with Imagine K-12. So what happens? But first of all, when's the next class? And from a timing perspective and a process perspective, what happens, and what does an entrepreneur need to know?
Yeah, we're planning for the next class to be in the summer of 2013. The process is simple. It's not surprisingly similar to YC's. You fill out an online application. It's very simple, and we review the applications and choose a number of them that fit our criteria to come and interview with us. And from the ones we interview, we pick our cohort of companies.
So what is your criteria?
Our criteria tends to revolve on the one hand, and most importantly, around the founders, and whether we believe that the founding team is a team that has that has what it takes to be successful. And some of that is gut, some of that is experience. We've all worked with lots of startup companies, not just the 39 that we've worked with so far to Imagine K-12, but the many more that we've seen. I've seen a couple hundred with Y Combinator and 70 or so on my own. So we have lots of experience with what, even just talking probabilistically, is likely to work with startup teams. And then, we try to judge whether the idea that they're putting in front of us is something that could be meaningful.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. We believe very strongly in the lean startup method, and in order for that to work, you need someone who can code, right? So when we first got going, we talked with a lot of people. It's really clear that there were a lot of people with a lot of great ideas, very smart in the education industry, but there weren't too many people that could build products to help them. So one of our criteria, you need someone on your team that can actually build the product that you're pitching, and that's what we're bringing to the party. I think that's new.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was one of the reasons we started Imagine K-12, was to bring sort of the hacker crowd into education and to really incent great builders and hackers to in the most positive sense of that word, to come in and do their stuff in this space. It is not impossible to get into Imagine K-12 without someone who can build as part of your team, but it's considerably more difficult.
And I think we'll take one last question, and then we'll open up to the audience. One of the things that I think, it was in yesterday's presentation, someone said that what Andreessen Horowitz is doing now is they're kind of a investor, venture capitalist with a service provider model. Do you guys get involved in providing those type of services to the startups that you support?
Absolutely. If you look at what we do, it's across many different functions. I think what Andreessen Horowitz has done is they've formalized that in a bigger way. So they have an HR department in part of their VC firm that helps service their startups. What we do is we hold a seminar on how to recruit people, what to look for in hiring, those kind of the ground up type advice that can get them started. And it's in a much more informal, case-by-case method, and I think so the answer is yes, but kind of in a different way.
Okay, well, great. Well, thank you very much. I know there's going to be some great talent and success that will come out of Imagine K-12. So with that, I'd like to open up to the audience. Sure.
Hi, I'm Greg from Pearson, and just curious, do you guys have opportunity areas that you look for each year of Imagine K-12, like certain challenges or opportunities that you're trying to find companies that can fulfill that opportunity? So whether it's like behavior management or an LMS or something.
Sure. When we first got going, we had actually we put a list of things we were looking for that we knew were problems and put them on our website and look for that. We don't have that list anymore because most of those problems have been addressed or are being attacked at the moment. So there is no specific list. I think we each have our own pet peeves. We'd love to see certain things happen.
Yeah, we should probably do that and take another rev at that. We try not to be too prescriptive as to what the companies ought to be doing that come to Imagine K-12. We'd rather leave that to the creativity and the imagination of the founders. But I do think it's, just like Paul has great, big ideas we'd like to see solved. We had that, and we probably need to take another look at another rev given what we've learned and what we've seen. But I think it's a good point.
Any other questions?
If you guys don't ask questions, we're going to ask questions of you, so beware.
Hey, I'm Mike from Rocket Ship. I know we talked pretty early on. I'm curious what advice you guys have for your portfolio companies on whether to target selling to charters or districts. Obviously, I'm from the charter world, but I think it seems easier to sell into charters, but clearly the bulk of the money is in traditional school districts.
I'll start with that. So whether to sell to charters or districts. One of the things that we're doing, and we hired someone at Imagine K-12 specifically to do this, is to build a strong network of connections to schools in the Bay Area and around where we're based and around the country, so that we can forge relationships with people who are interested in the educational system wherever they may live. With Imagine K-12 and Imagine K-12 companies, so they'll be willing to try stuff. But one of the things we tell all our companies is it's better to start with 100 customers who really love you than to have 1 million customers who kind of sort of like you. And if it's true, and a lot of times it's true that charters are a little bit more willing to go out on a limb with new technology and try new things. And so if that's who you can get to go first, that's great. Fundamentally, it's who you can get, who has the biggest problem that whatever it is that you're solving, with whatever you're solving, is going to be most amenable to taking whatever crappy MVP you put out there and willing to suffer with it because that problem means so much to them. And we do see that frequently, that charters lie there, but it's really where you can find it.
Any other questions?
Does anyone else have a question? I was going to ask, actually, the MVP thing. Is there a higher bar, do you think, for what an MVP has to be when you're selling into schools and to teachers? Do you see, say, more resistance to trying something again if it didn't work the first time in education than you do in other markets?
I don't think the bar's higher. I think what's higher is an appreciation for the continuity that schools have to provide, right? So you can't just shut down something if the school is actively using that, and you have to appreciate that fact, right? But a problem's a problem, and the MVP almost by definition is like, are you providing, what's a quantum of utility? In order for that school to use it. And so I think the bar is kind of the same, but it's an appreciation for, school's an ongoing concern. You can't leave anyone hanging. I think there is, and one of the differences we see anyways between, largely, this is just kind of a general rule between charters and, public schools, is there's a higher comfort level with technology and experimenting in general. Right, so we find charters more, just a better place to kind of work with, at least initially. And at least the charters in our area, Rocket Ship, Summit, folks like that, are not, John Danner and Diane Taverner. There's like they're entrepreneurs. They get failings part of the deal, and so they've built that into the culture. That is certainly not pervasive everywhere, and so the schools that we work with, at least initially, that we for some of our teams, where we point them to Mike Tang, and here's his address, it's a select few, and we choose them very carefully because we know it's not the pervasive mode of thought.
And that being said, it's important to point out that unlike traditional technology that's been sort of foisted upon teachers and schools, if things go wrong, you do not have a 3-month process to get them fixed. We encourage our founders to put their phone numbers directly on the website, and it's really an extraordinary thing for a teacher to see a phone number, to actually call it, say, something didn't work, and to have the founder say, wait, hang on a sec. Okay, try now. And then it's fixed. That's like, the teacher is often in those situations a fan for life, because, that's not the world that they were living in not that long ago. And so, whether the bar is higher or not, the ability to make things right is extraordinarily better.
You guys have talked a lot about the the challenges, the very convoluted process to market. Steve Case talked about this as sort of an enterprise sale, years of time to. I just wondered, we've seen in other tech sectors with sort of consumeration of IT, are there other parallel channels to market for you, and other disruptive things that you will look to fund, or are you more looking to accelerate people selling into their traditional education system?
We're looking to have an impact, right? I think that's probably our mission statement, whether it's inside the institution of K-12 or outside. So, Robbie, who's sitting right behind you, Tap to Learn, that's a direct-to-consumer play. I mean, he has built-in teacher functionality, but he's selling directly to parents. There are, countries without school infrastructures, kids not getting educations, so we're not having to necessarily replace anything in those countries. There's huge opportunity there, huge potential to have impact there. So I don't know if that answers your question. I don't think we would love, and part of what got us going is looking at our K-12 system and trying to make it improve faster. But that's not our only bet, right? We want to impact kids.
Part of being a seed or even earlier than seed investor like we are is a very powerful ability to suspend disbelief. So again, we try not to be prescriptive about what's going to work. If a couple of kids come and tell us they're going to sell into every school district in the country, why the heck not? And we try not to filter specifically for those things because although I agree with Steve Case that things are going to change slower than we want them to, they're going to change faster than anyone expects. So some of our companies sell directly to school districts and do it with actually remarkable success. Hapara is a company that comes to mind that sells tools on top of Google Apps for Education and has sold hundreds of thousands of seats to principals and superintendents around the world. But also many of our companies are either selling directly to consumer or are being used by teachers directly because they solve a problem. And again, it all works for us.
My question is about profitability, generating revenue, and how that may or may not be aligned with doing good in the educational space. Do you apply, is it fair to apply or correct to apply the same measures that a YC might in terms of is a company successful or not? Is it fair, or do you apply those same measures to your companies?
The good news is, like YCs, all of the companies are so far from profitability that it's kind of irrelevant. I don't know that comes into our thinking. I think we do believe that for ed tech companies, it will sometimes take a little bit longer to get traction and get going and develop a revenue stream and develop profits in a sustainable business over time. And we hope to be able to build the ecosystem, an ecosystem around that will support them. But I think we have someone from Pearson here. That's a very profitable and very successful company for a long time. There is reason to believe that even in this system, big, profitable, sustainable businesses can be built. And again, maybe we have our rose-colored glasses on, but those are the ones we prefer to keep on for now.
Hi, my name's Ankit from Chegg. One of the things that has come up several times is, the U.S. is falling behind in other countries. In your experience, have you seen anything at these other countries that are ranked higher than us, so to speak, in terms of technology that we can use here?
So we have hosted delegations from the Singapore government, South Korean government. So not specifically a use of technology, just an appetite, right? An activeness in looking for it and seeing how it can help, I think is the one thing, at least from our vantage point, what we've seen from our seats. We have gotten a lot of inbound, unsolicited traffic from countries And in almost every case, they're higher on the list than the U.S. who are looking to see what's going on in ed tech.
Yeah. So we're going to run over here because this has just been the best panel.
There's so much love in the air right now.
Yeah.
We
So
can't leave.
I'll just finish off. So there really is a revolution happening in education because of technology, because of a lot of things, but because of technology. And the United States is like we are in most areas of technology, leading that charge. And so it's really an opportunity for us to get there first. Although the other cool thing about the technologies we're building is that they work elsewhere instantly, and that's cool too.
Okay, this is a wrap. Thanks, guys.